Ah, for Hello, Wargamers. Welcome to episode 9 of Betrayed by Dice, the tabletop wargaming podcast that always requires a day one FAQ. My name is Lee Burns, and I am delighted, as ever, to be joined here by Mr. Daryl T. Stoker. Daryl, hello. How's things going? How's the weekend been?
Yeah, great weekend this weekend. I've had a visit from an old friend and a tournament, which we'll talk about later, which is awesome. Yeah. How about you? How are you?
Good. Yes, good. It's been busy. What have I been doing today? I've made like a kilo of kimchi. I've been to the allotment. I've been to a kid's birthday party, and I've been giving my daughter bike lessons. So I'm kind of knackered, but like looking forward to be energized.
Yes, of
by
course.
getting into some chit chat about wargaming. And this isn't a podcast about like middle class lifestyle.
Yeah.
So we'll get into what we're actually talking about. So if you're catching this on YouTube, please hit all those like, subscribe, and bell icons. And if you're on Spotify, iTunes, or any other podcast thing, it would be great to give us a review.
Yeah.
So today's topic is sort of first principles discussion, really. It's like we're getting into talking about why it is that we actually play war games anyway. There's lots to discuss there, and I'm really interested to get into what it is that actually, makes us want to do this slightly odd hobby that we do with toy soldiers and everything. And great to see where, yourself and I maybe have similar things or motivations, but where the differences are too.
Yeah, definitely.
Some of the reasons for sort of thinking about this was coming out of a lot of discussions that like crop up in groups that we have, both online and offline, about like the differences between competitive and narrative gaming. But I think I sort of wanted to like sort of go up a level from that to try and figure out what it is at the heart of what I or you enjoy in wargaming, and maybe to sort of like think from that about how can we have the games that we actually enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because that's essentially always going to be the aim, isn't it? To enjoy yourself.
Yeah,
nobody does this out of spite. It's something that we spend a lot of time on. So we're obviously doing it because we enjoy it, or at least want to.
That's the idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the idea. So we'll get into all of that. But first, a few podcast regulars, including a brand new one for this episode, which is called This One Cool Thing I Saw, or TOCTIS, if you want to give it an acronym, and why not? The idea here being that every episode will kick off by picking out that one cool thing that we've seen from across the many and varied worlds of wargaming. So it could be a Kickstarter, a new mini, some fancy new paints, an Instagram post. If it's cool, it's in. So, Daryl, do you want to shoot first? What's been your cool thing that you're picking out for this month?
Sure. So my TOCTIS for this episode is a Kickstarter that I saw by way of that Irish YouTube channel. They used to have a
Beasts of War.
I think it's called something. Is it still called Beasts of War? But yeah. So they showcased this miniatures game Kickstarter that's coming on called Blood on the Sands by Dead Again Games. So I think they're an Australian or Kiwi game manufacturer or designer that's came up with this gladiatorial combat game, which has a sort of semi-narrative element where you design and make a ludus, which is like a gladiatorial school, and then you can pick different types of gladiator, like that essentially had classes of gladiator in ancient Rome with the different, which was dependent on what type of loadout they would carry in terms of weapons and armor and things like that. So they all have unique stat lines and abilities and things like that, and then there's a deck of cards that you can build to choose your special attacks, and then they've got proprietary dice that make your turn different each time. You can't just do the same thing all the time because it's dependent on where your dice land essentially. It looks really cool. Currently, it's just a one-on-one game, and it's sort of kind of designed for you to play leagues, essentially. But it looks very fun. It looks like you can get rid of some of the dice that you've rolled at the beginning of the turn to augment your defense. You can use it for movement, and there's specials depending on which class of gladiator you're using. It just looks fun. The miniatures have been designed by Wargames Atlantic, so they've got a multi-part hard plastic kit for the gladiators coming out as well. It just looks fun.
And those can be obviously used in a bunch of different things.
Loads of different stuff. Yeah. I mean, whatever you want. I know there's Gangs of Rome's got some. You can have sort of marauding gladiators and things as well, can't you? And it's played on a hex grid, so movement isn't. You don't have to have tape measures or anything like that. Just sounds cool. It sounds
looks
fun.
very cool. I mean, who doesn't want to play gladiator? You know,
exactly.
As a miniature game.
Exactly.
Really interested that in anything where there's so few minis or just like one on the table, but like how then that sort of gets fleshed out by the mechanics to make that work. That's like quite an interesting sort of design challenge.
Yeah, I think any game which focuses on single occupant or like single sided combat has to be really well designed, because quite often complexity and depth is added by variables, isn't it? Which is usually by way of adding other units to an army. But I watched them play out the game, and there's a bit of a fatigue element to it as well, and you can appeal to the crowd to get like bonuses with some of the after you've done certain things, so that if you draw first blood, all that kind of stuff. So it just sounds really cool. And then you get to build a bit of a narrative, and you get to have some like interludus rivalry in the club and stuff like that. So it just sounds fun. The only problem is it's
shipping from Australia.
Shipping is significant, to say the least. And although the game looks very well designed, and conceptually it looks great, it looks very expensive for what it is. The core box is nearly £100, 90 something pounds, I think. And it's a couple of decks of cards, one set of proprietary dice, a set of miniatures, and a rulebook. And in terms of what you expect from a 2-player starter set these days, that is quite expensive, but we'll see. We'll see if it hits the shelves. It might be a bit cheaper when we're not having to factor in manufacture costs and things like that, or maybe we'll be able to just buy digital editions and buy the miniatures from Wargame Atlantic. I don't know.
That would sound like a smart move, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But it was interesting. I thought it looked cool.
It looked cool, and it does look cool for sure.
Yeah, it reminded us of a game that I used to play called Arena Rex, which was a very cool gladiatorial combat game, but also very hard to find UK stock from, expensive resin miniatures, and a very that didn't have much of a campaign sort of thing fleshed out. It was much more of a
once and done sort of
skirmish style thing, but cool. Yeah.
All right, I'll go with mine. So this is someone that we both know well, so friend of the podcast and friend of each of us, really. So Drew from West Allotment Wildlands posted in a Discord a bust, and we can talk about some bust painting later on.
Absolutely.
But so this is a piece. I'm going to put a picture up, obviously, for anyone who's on YouTube. Anyone who's just listening, let me try and describe this for you. It's effectively a sort of a chaos sister of battle.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing piece that he's done. It's a bust, so sort of like larger scale, with a background in there. It's got like a moon in the background, and sort of all sorts of like really amazing like lighting, really sort of like OSL, but sort of like the lighting of the whole piece is really amazing.
His volumes are really good. Yeah.
So Drew is we spoke a bit about Drew last episode. So like of everybody at the club, or that I know really that paints, I guess I would say that he's probably the person who is like most convincingly painting in a really artistly kind of style, like with colors and volumes and all those things which like you need to be good at, especially to do a bust. And he seems to be able to pull it off really well.
I think it's worth saying that he does it when he wants to on things like this, but he also has other miniatures that he paints to very high tabletop standards, but he doesn't do necessarily as much as that because it's probably not appropriate, is it?
Of course, so this is a guy with like multiple fully painted Warmaster armies, which involved, like putting a bit of paint on some miniatures and making them all the same color kind of thing.
And
but,
still probably better than my 32mm.
It's possible. But yeah, it's just a fantastic piece. But almost as much as the piece itself, what I was really interested by was that this is something he painted at an event called Dogma 48 in Copenhagen, which is the first time I'd ever heard of it. This is not my story to tell, and it would be great to have, I think we've spoken a little bit about having Drew on to have a chat about, this kind of painting would be fantastic. But effectively what this event is you go to Copenhagen to like an art studio, I think, and you've got literally 48 hours to do something from start to finish. And I think for some people this will involve some sculpting, to actually get a piece together to be able to paint, whereas others are just painting it, which raises all sorts of questions which I want to have answered, like how much do you sleep, where do you sleep? I think I read somewhere that breakfast is provided. I've read a blog post that Roman Lepat, an extraordinary painter, put out a few years ago talking about the event. But yeah, the idea of going somewhere completely with the sole intention of working and focusing on something for 2 days solid and sort of seeing what you can come out with is obviously is really interesting. And Drew's absolutely sort of knocked this thing out of the park. It just looks amazing. I'm
sure there's definitely an element of meeting like-minded folk and talking about, which is probably going to come up a bit in this episode, isn't it? But sharing an experience with someone that likes to do the same thing as you, or is interested in learning to do the thing that you like to do, and I'm sure there'll be a spectrum of ability there as well.
I'm sure there's people there who are in the absolute, well, Roman Lepat went to it, people like that who are absolutely in the top tier of like the international shit hot miniatures game, and other people who are want to go for that experience to sort of like to learn from people like that. But I can imagine it'd be like an intense but kind of amazing experience.
Definitely.
All right, cool. That's one cool thing each. Should we talk about our own hobby progress and plans?
Sure.
Do you want to have a shoot about what hobby you've been getting up to this last month or so?
Cool. So yesterday I ran Conquer the North 4, which is my fourth fully set up Conquest Tournament, ran at the club. We had 10 participants, and sadly we had a couple of dropouts this time. We had some people travelling up from quite far. So Alex, the aforementioned friend, travelled up from Canterbury. We also had a member that a friend that came up from the Midlands, who was one of the vanguards that I met and played. Didn't play him, but played in the same tournament at the LGT a couple of years ago. Aaron, who's a lovely guy, and then a gent called Richard, or Cornish Dragon, came up from Liverpool. Luckily, his wife did a PhD here, so it was a very good excuse to say, why don't you come up to Newcastle? I'll pay for a trip. You get to see your friends, and I'll come play in a tournament. And he was a lovely guy. It was great to have him around and play some games with them. And
that's synergy.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a nurse too, so that's my background. So it was good to have a bit of a chat with him about that. So yeah, great day, and I did quite a lot of hobby leading up to it in terms of making the trophies. So I did a lot of 3D printing over the last sort of week or so. We'll stick a picture of the trophies in because I'm quite proud of them.
Yeah, looking great. Looking really fantastic.
I pride myself on doing some really nice trophies because I think it's dead easy to just hand out a box of miniatures that people probably don't have a use for, especially when it's not an army they collect. But if they take something home that is going to last, like a nice trophy, I think that's just something a bit special. So yeah, lots of trophies. I changed the bust that I use because I use busts as trophies, so I 3D print busts, mount them, and then I use CAD software to make a plaque with the channel logo and all that kind of stuff on, and the details of the prize that they won. And I changed the trophy this year for the best painted, and I'm really a big fan of the new one. So you'll see that one. It's really cool. So I did that. I also did. So me and my fiance spent a lot of time building some models together, which was really cool. So I built quite a lot of spires over the last month or so. for Conquest, and really enjoyed it. Some of the new Leonine Avatara, which are these sort of
Very cool.
cat centaur, like sphinx-like archers. They're really cool.
So this is for the spires in Conquest who have had like a bit of a not glow up, but they've had some addition. They've had some blanks filled in.
Yeah,
and they've
totally,
had some cool new stuff.
Yeah, they have.
So was this her first rodeo at putting miniatures together?
No,
or
no.
not at
So
all?
when me and Amanda first got together, we ended up as sort of like trying to find like a joint hobby other than video gaming, which we both do a lot of. She picked up miniature gaming because she had always wanted to try it. She'd done a lot of D&D and Hero Quest and stuff when she was younger. So she started playing Malifaux. So she had her own Malifaux
Oh, right, okay. Sure.
gangs. She built them herself. She painted them herself. So yeah, it's not our first rodeo, but it was just a good opportunity to sit down at a table together and build some models. So that was cool. So quite a lot of stuff on there. Excuse me. And I've also been pretty fastidiously chipping away at my bust entry for the bust club. So I think we mentioned it before on the podcast, but one of the things that I've arranged at the club is a running cycle of 2 months at a time of a bust that I provide to people at the club to paint with a goal of learning something new, trying something that they've never tried before, learning something about painting. And yeah, this one's been really good. It's been really good to see everyone's progress so far. So Friday coming is going to be the day that we all bring them in together and sort of have a bit of a chat about it. I tried non-metallic metal for the first time. It's incredibly difficult, but I've enjoyed it.
Looks good.
Yeah,
Looks good on that act.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll put a picture up here. If that's all right.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
But yeah, looks really good. Do you want to talk a bit about so have you found the pros and cons or the challenges or whatever you want to say of painting at that bigger scale where you're having to render things basically?
So I feel like it's easier. I do feel like it's easier because, and I was chatting to a lovely gent from the club called Ben about this, and he at first had a lot of sort of anxiety about painting something a bit bigger, or he was quite sort of intimidated by painting something a bit bigger because he thought it was going to be harder. But what he realized actually is all of those techniques that he'd been trying to put into practice on smaller miniatures suddenly become a lot easier when you've got more space to do them, and there's more space to do blends without it becoming a mistake or over sort of
one brush stroke isn't a disaster.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
I still managed to do that when I was I really over egged the transition and went way too light, and then got a bit of feedback, which was exactly what the whole thing is about. Posted a picture in, and people were saying, "Oh yeah, your NMM looks okay, but why don't you try taking the darker color down a bit and
just bump that contrast?"
Exactly,
basically.
And I did, and it did it did look better than it did when it was a bit, because I think I did too many steps, was too much, and it become too homogeneous, and it didn't have that shine. It just looked more like a flat color that I had blended.
Interesting. I mean, full confession from me is that I did initially sign up to this, and it hasn't happened at all. And I will put some paint on the thing at some point, and I look forward to doing that. But yeah, it's been fantastic to see everyone sort of giving each other feedback on this. For me, the big thing that's sort of the challenge of painting that particular bust is most people have painted it with Caucasian skin tones, and to do that at a larger scale while getting the amount of contrast right, not having the muscles look like little islands, and all of those kind of things. But it's really interesting. I'm looking forward to giving it a go when I eventually do. But people have done an amazing job.
Yeah, I'm really impressed. I'm really glad that some of the people that picked it up and tried it were people who would admit that they're in their sort of junior years of being painters. That they consider themselves novice painters, but it's good to see them just embracing the opportunity with both hands and just having a go at it. And it's been amazing seeing so many different approaches as well. We've had the airbrush with inks over the top to get some volumes. We've had contrast over a dry brush, or a what's it called, slap chop style thing.
Absolutely no nothing wrong with like slap chopping a boss to get
Yeah,
it
looked
to
great.
get it looking
Liam.
good. Yeah, absolutely
Yeah,
great.
I saw Liam, I think, had done his with that slap chop style, and it's turned out really well. Yeah, I still haven't tried the eyes though. I'm just eyes scare me.
Eyes are difficult. Even when the miniature's bigger,
Yeah.
eyes are still difficult. It's just who was it? Who did one? Was it Ben? That like the eyes are like off to the side or like looking in
I
a
think so,
like
yeah.
in a particular way, and like that probably is, I don't know, like a good way
safe
or a
way of
safe
doing
way
it,
rather than
yeah.
having them like look at straight
Yeah.
ahead. And if one of them's a bit
Yeah. We all know
Alright, then it's
know
just-
what happens when you try and paint eyes and then you don't get them dead straight.
yeah, absolutely. All right, fantastic. That's that you for the hobby this
That's
month?
me for the hobby. Yeah. How about you?
Well, I didn't do anything on the bust. And when I was thinking about this and trying to like put some things together, I was sort of thinking it had been like quite a fallow month, and it sort of has been to some extent. But there has been some bits and bobs in there, so yeah, I'll quickly whiz through them. I've finished a unit. This was a sort of like hangover from like last year, if I'm honest. But I did finish a unit of 4th edition Fantasy High Elf Archers. So your absolute classic, all facing exactly the same way, all
these
monopose
Blood
guys.
Island.
These
No.
are not, man. This is from a box set that I think had lizard men in it.
Okay.
Blum 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 blum. It was 4th edition fantasy, so Blood Island was like 7th into 8th edition.
Was it?
So yeah, you're looking like sort of like 92 or something. that this came out. So yeah, these. But do you know what? I think there's an absolute charm, and I really enjoyed doing. I don't know, high elves are high elves, and there's a sort of like there's an aesthetic of like Warhammer high elves that sort of like carries through.
It sticks, doesn't it?
Yeah, but but most of them have been or are heavily influenced by Jez Goodwin sculpts at some point in time. So and I tried to do them in a sort of old school kind of way, so like with bright colors. So I used some of Louise Sugden's Pro Acryl paints.
Yeah,
so there's
Rogue
like
Hobbies.
that's the one. So ultramarine blue was on there. The yellow, I want to say, is called bismuth yellow.
Bismuth yellow, yeah.
Really nice bright yellow. And the red, did I use the red? I forget. But anyway.
Bright orange red?
Yeah, there's like it's like Blood Angel, it's like an old version a version of the old Blood Angels orange kind of thing.
Yeah.
So so use those, and they're really bright. They're really bright colors. They're very cool. Pro Acryl's still not my like favorite for like how it works on the wet palette, but like that's fine. Everyone can like different paints and stuff. And painting 15 miniatures of the exact same pose was kind of weird as well, but like kind of became a bit of a sort of like Zen repetition thing. It was like, pouches, right? Okay, I've got 15 pouches to paint. I'm going to do these all exactly the same. But it was fine, and enjoyed doing them, and I like how they look. So
they look great. Yeah, they look great. And I think I don't know. Have you added that in background in like with the app?
No. So that background is that you'll see if looking at the picture on here was a little cardboard cutout thing from a recent edition of White Dwarf.
God, yeah.
So on one side, so that's an Age of Sigmar thing with like an orc's head or whatever. But on the other side, there's like I don't know, a dusty 40k planet or something on the other side. But as far as that goes, we haven't done good GW, bad GW yet. So, but like, here's an early thing. I think like they need to put some value into White Dwarf. They need to. It's £8 a copy or £7 a copy.
That is crazy.
And like little cardboard backgrounds for taking pictures of miniatures. That should be in every month. It's just a JPEG that they need to import into the thing, but it's a little bit of value. It's something kind of cool.
Yeah. Extra props, by the way, for Warhammer Hill. Having your miniatures on a Warhammer Hill. Hills are not seen enough these days, are they?
I think that's absolutely correct. I think there's nowhere near enough hills, and that is the old Warhammer Hill, which they hilariously just recently brought back
at a reasonable price.
At a reasonable price of what was it, like 20 quid?
26, I think. Yeah,
not a bad price for a good hill.
It is a lot of plastic for what it is. Yeah.
Anyway, there we go. So that was some high elves.
That's as good of a GW you'll get from me today.
All right. What else? So I had a game of Kill Team coming. So I painted up all the barricades, grenades, and measuring bits for that. Again, when I'm not doing much painting, I really enjoy painting terrain and other assorted little doodahs and bits because it's stress-free. you can try out some new sort of different techniques without, worrying overly about the results. The one thing that I tried on these was a MIG ammo oil brusher. So these are like for anyone who might be thinking about trying oil paints but doesn't want to get into the whole buying a whole load of white spirits and making mixes every time. These must be pre-mixed with something, because straight out of basically it comes out like a little, almost like a makeup brush type of thing, which is in a tube, which has got the oil paint in it.
Yeah.
And straight from that, it's probably a bit on the thick side, but you can use it straight from that. So for rust, which is what I used it for here, just dabbed it straight on a couple of the barricades, and then sort of feathered it down with a little bit of with a brush, which is moistened in white spirit. You could probably do it without white spirit, but maybe you would struggle. But it's an interesting product. They're like £3 or something.
Yeah,
and there's some. It's not a huge. It's a pocket money sort of purchase, and there's
just to have a shot of.
Just to have a shot of, really cool. I tried to do a bit of OSL there on some ladders and whatnot.
Yeah, I think it looks great.
And got to use those in a game of Kill Team, so that was cool.
How did you do the OSL? Was it did you do the outer glow with just a little bit of stippling, or was it with the airbrush?
It was no airbrush, so it was just brushed on. And if I remember rightly, no sort of stippling or dry brushing or anything. So just glazed on.
Oh, nice.
Just glazes. Which takes a bit of time, but again, it's terrain. It's a relaxing time. Who cares?
Stick a podcast on or something and just go at it.
That's it. Listen to Betrayed by Dice, and away you go. And then just a couple of single models that I did. So like an Orc Commando for Kill Team.
Very cool.
And then a stand of Warmaster Knights.
Oh, I didn't know you had done those. Yeah, they're awesome.
So that was just a straightforward Xenophort and contrast jobs on most of those, using Vallejo Express Color on the Orc. And that was interesting. That's the first time I've used Express Color.
It's very different to contrast, isn't it?
It is. And I don't have any strong opinions on like what's the champion of. I will say that some of the contrast paints are rubbish and don't do much contrasting. And
especially some of the newer ones, that yellow, is it Imperial
Fist yellow? I mean, it's a nice bright yellow, but it doesn't settle into the recesses, and it's just an ink, without doing the thing where it sort of pulls away. But yeah, between Army Painter 2.0, Contrast, if you get the good ones, and Vallejo, I'm sort of just like mixing and matching which ones I'll use. They do have slightly different finishes, so I'd probably use like a varnish at the end to bring it together. Yeah. But I don't know about you, but no really strong opinions on which I prefer. I mean, other than price and things like that.
So I think, just like you said, that brand to brand, there's goods and bads from them all. I find well, I'm a self-confessed Procreal fan.
Sure.
But there's still paints that I could pick off that rack there, and I say, I would prefer a different brand, because it's like they're umber. They've got a dark umber or it's either dark umber or burnt umber. No, it's not. It's mahogany. I'm talking about. It's mahogany. It's very, very transparent and takes so much building up. It's a nice hue, but it's just and then I've had similar paints from other ranges that just cover a lot better with the exact same colour. I just don't understand. I've used a bit of, I wish I had never had, because now it's going to make you spend a load of money, but been using some 3rd gen AK stuff recently.
Well, yeah.
Oh, it's very good.
There is that, and for me, they're by miles winning the like drop a bottle wars as well, the actual container for the thing, for them, it's got like that satisfying sort of little crosshatch, so you can always like get the top off, no bother, and it doesn't seem to clog. So like I had, which ones is it? The Duncan Rhodes ones, the too thin coats.
Yeah, they're notorious for having.
They just clog the whole time, and it's just kind of annoying. It's not the point of dropper bottles. So yeah, AK 3rd gen, the few that I've tried do seem to be absolutely fantastic. But yeah, there you go. That's about it for me. That's some hobby, not a huge amount, but a decent amount. How about any games played? Is there any notable games that you want to have a go through?
Well, I managed to have a game. So I've had to have a bit of a hiatus from gaming in general recently, just for a mix of things. But I've been getting back into properly playing games over the last few months. And I got my first proper game of Conquest in against Dan a couple of weeks ago, and then Alex, a friend who was a member of West London Wildlands but ended up moving away because his wife got a job down south. Came back for Conquer the North, the tournament. So I managed to get a game in against him on Friday. So it was a very good game because I got to spend time with my mate who I haven't seen for ages and also play a game that I love that I hadn't been playing much for ages.
Perfect.
So that was really good. And then obviously I had 3 games following that the next day at Conquer the North because I played as a ringer. I had a game of Infinity with Rob, our friend from the club and a fellow admin of mine.
That was a demo game for him, right?
It was a demo game, and he's bought an army for it, so it was clearly a successful demo game. Yeah. So yeah, and so that was my first game of 5th and 5. So that was really good. Oh no, it's my second game. Sorry, but it was really good. I tried Halo Flashpoint with Scott. That's quite a lot of fun. Very quick pick up and play game. It feels a bit like Dead Zone, the Mantic game.
Yep.
And
is it really a reskin of Dead Zone?
Kind of, kind of.
How Halo-y is it? Has it got like things that happen where you're like, class?
Yeah, there is definitely very Halo-y things that happen in it. You can stick people with plasma grenades, and there's, you pick up weapons around the map from map weapon spawn points and things. It's very, it is fun. And last but not least, managed to get a game in of 7th Sea City 5 Sales, which is a living card game made by Pinebox Studios. Very, very cool concept. It's based on City. I think it's called 7th Sea, which is an RPG universe / setting.
Okay.
Which it feels very like pirate based. And I like LCGs because what it means is that you can buy a box of cards and another person can buy the same box and everyone's got access to the same things. It's not chasing cards through packs. And the combat mechanic in it is great because it is essentially pirates having or swashbucklers or D'Artagnan-esque musketeers having sword fights along the streets of a city, of a
down on the docks kind of
down
thing?
on the docks and on top of buildings and all sorts of things. But the way the fights work feels a lot like a sword fight because you have each time you have a fight, it just continues to go until there's no threat being passed back to another person. But you play cards against each other from a limited hand, and they have 3 stats on. They've got riposte, parry, and thrust. So riposte sends some of the damage that they were sending towards you back to them. Parry just knocks them out, and then thrust adds further damage to the pool. So then it just becomes about this pool of damage trying to be mitigated and then sent back to the other person using cards, and inevitably you'll take a scratch here and take a scratch there, and it's just, do you keep going until someone dies, or do you run out of cards, or
so you're trying to build up to some like awesome haymaker which is going to be passed to the other person, or not? Is that not the...
So it's more like you're working on these, doing a wound or 2 at a time.
Okay.
And I mean, most people only have 3, 4, 5 health, so it's not hard to get, but then you're basically working towards a coup de grace. So it comes to that, like, I've got a couple left, and you can essentially bow out of a fight if you want to by just taking a load of damage and not playing a card back, which is essentially you just scarpering, isn't it? But there's just some really cool design choices. The game plays really interestingly. It's all about trying to control areas of the city for influence, and it was just really fun. And I got to play it with Carl, who I like a lot as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was good. How about you? Games?
Yeah, quite a few. Just before we zoom on to mine, though, I just want to take you back to the tournament, on yesterday, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, anything coming out of that? Like what's good, or what what people enjoyed playing, or any interesting matchups, or what's the state of play with Conquest at the minute?
Yeah, well, so state of play is that I think Wadrun are still in a really good place. Nords, who classically have always been a faction that have struggled to be played because they were a bit of a finesse faction. They've had quite a big glow up in terms of you can get away with more sort of liberal lists. There's quite a few different lists that'll work now, and
everything got a bit better across
just
the
a bit
board.
better, yeah. And so that things got a little bit more resilient, and they're back to being able to score early, which is very good. But the trade off that they got, because they used to be able to score early very easily, but the trade off now is that it's quite easy to have more stands in them. But then people build bigger lists with bigger units and etc. And then there's a bit of healing added in as well, which is pretty cool. So yeah, but or you can go the other way and not have loads of infantry and just run like 7 giants and have a whale of a time doing that, which sounds pretty fun too.
How do you run 7 giants in this sort of conquest system of, you usually having to bring some mainstay stuff in order?
Some characters. There's
Giants
some character giants now.
right,
yeah,
okay.
so there's a giant character called the Cedar who has mainstay and restricted Jotnars.
Okay.
So you can take normal mountain Jotnars and then frost or ice or sea Jotnars as your backups.
All right, makes sense. I mean, yeah, it's not a daft idea for them to allow people to bring an army of giants, because some people are going to want to do that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But obviously, it really limits your game because you're not bringing stuff on for most of the first couple of turns.
And how did you get on as the ringer?
Oh, not very well. I won 1 game, lost 2. The first game was against Alex White from the club, who it was his first ever game of Conquest, and he came to a tournament.
Great to do that at a tournament.
With almost a completely set up army with the majority of it painted as well, which was pretty stunning work.
Wow!
So well done, Alex.
He's put that together in like a
very
matter of weeks
short amount of time.
He?
Yeah, he's done really well.
Wow, amazing.
So the first game was more of a teaching game than anything, but he's clearly an experienced wargamer, picked things up really quickly and played a fairly astute game, so that was good. And then I played against Richard, who was the guy that came up from Liverpool. Had a really fun game against him, and then had a really close match for the last match against Rob, who's one of the other admins from the club, not the Rob that I mentioned before. And his Dweghome, and it came down to, a couple of supremacies and me throwing away 1 unit really poorly. It was close. It was close, essentially. But yeah, it was a really, really good game, and he got a very well-deserved win. Those 4 games were my first 4 games with Spires since the game came out, so there was a lot of learning involved, because as you know, Spires are not a faction of just put cards in an order and it's usually okay. It relies a lot on characters doing buffs which reorder the stack and things like that. So I had a bit of a sore head at the end of the day, but I think
well earned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Who's good in Spires? Who do I need to be chucking into lists?
To be honest with you, Underspires are great.
Okay.
So Underspires, which is all of your old
meat shield and
drones, brute drones, all of that stuff, and Strix. So anything that is a drone, basically gets regeneration.
Okay.
So there's lots of healing in that, or you can go Directorate, which has again access to the same sort of things, and it means that you get to turn lights into scoring units, which is very useful, because as you know, you can put quite a lot of light units on the
stuff
board
on the table, and cause people a bit of a problem with that.
And just have waves of reinforcements.
Awesome. All right, games played for me. Well, one of my hobby resolutions for this year was to finish some campaigns, and we have taken steps in that direction, excitingly. So a couple of those games that I've played recently have been Frostgrave, which has been the start of Josh's Frostgrave campaign, which has been running at the West Allotment Wildlings Club. Firstly, a shout out to Josh for sort of doing that, because I mean he's put a lot of effort in, but like it's quite apparent that like doing anything like that, it is effort. When somebody actually
it is.
And like he mentioned it, it's sort of like almost being like a part-time job, I think. But it is, he's gone kind of the whole hog of creating like a custom scenario for the first scenario, adapting some rules, writing like custom documents for everybody so that everybody's on the same page, and encouraging people to like post stuff about the narrative for their war bands and stuff. So it's been fantastic. It's been a couple of great games, but yeah, like again, shout out to Josh, friend of the podcast, for having put that effort in, because it's really
definitely.
it just makes it a fun thing to be involved in from the start, really, and it sort of gives you the template to know like what you're doing. I mean, everybody that's involved, I think everybody that's involved so far, I think we're all on the same page, and Frostgrave is a game that encourages you to have fun with it, basically.
Yeah.
But it's been fantastic. We've had 2 games. The first was a custom one that Josh wrote called "We're Going on a Bear Hunt," where lots of bears were meant to turn up.
Yeah.
If the dice had rolled that way, then they would have done. But like our table didn't get too many bears, if any. I think maybe one came on. And the other game was the Well of Dreams or something like that. It's one of the ones out of the book. But basically, yeah, for anyone who's not played Frostgrave before, it's basically a game where you have a crew of a wizard, an apprentice, and some underlings. There's a bunch of treasure on the board. You have to get the treasure and get off before all the monsters turn up, or the other people that are playing turn up and sort of like start hacking you to bits and knacking you. And it's a really great system. I enjoy it a lot. It's a D20 system, so it's really swingy, and things can go badly wrong or really well.
People can get popped in one shot quite easily.
There's a decent amount of one shot, and it goes on. Josh, unfortunately, sent one of his guys up to the top of a castle that man-at-arms, woman-at-arms, as it actually is, had just previously gone up. I rolled a natural 20, and Bosh, that was the end of him. But that kind of thing does happen a lot. But it's a really fun game, and the group that we've got playing it together. So there's myself, Josh. There's a guy called Will who's been really great to play with, and shout out to him because he's got like basically a miniature for every situation. So you roll randomly for like monsters to come on. He's got painted miniatures of just about everything, which is fantastic. Carl, who you've mentioned already, a great guy and a great guy to play with, and Tom, that's been the people that I've been playing with, and just 2 really fun games. And this is probably gonna lead into like why we enjoy games and the kind of games that we do enjoy. But just absolutely fantastic. Really, well organized, well DM'd. Frostgrave is huge amounts of fun, great opponents, and a great time. Absolutely great.
Yeah, I like Frostgrave. It's fun.
And also, it's particularly in the second game, the table that we had was absolutely piled with terrain.
Yeah, it looked great, actually. I remember coming in and being like, oh, that's a really cool board.
And all sorts of different types of terrain. So Josh, again, has like been getting into like making lots of little foam bricks and making some terrain, some old GW stuff, all sorts of bits of MDF as well. So, really good times. And also on the campaign tip, there was the penultimate mission that I played of a Blackstone Fortress campaign. Again, this is so a shout out to Liam this time, who'd organised and has sort of DM'd this all the way through and expertly done. So this is the first time I'd played in this campaign for a little while, and it's sort of it's squeaky bum time now. This was like there's only this and then the final Dreadvault to go, and we've got like 3 goes in which to do them. Right, otherwise, it's sort of game over.
Yeah, no more continues.
No more continues. But yeah, really good. The way that we've had more characters than you would normally have for a game of Blackstone Fortress. So normally there's 4 characters on the board. We've generally had sort of like 5 or 6 people playing each time, which Liam's sort of like again expertly balanced out with the number of like the NPOs that turn up, NPCs, sorry, that turn up. But yeah, it was interesting to come in at a point where all the characters have sort of like leveled up a bunch of times. Tom's character had like a sword which was just one-shotting people all over the place. So you've come in. I've come into the game at sort of a very different point, but yeah, really enjoyable again.
Yeah,
really good times, and
you're a fan of Blackstone, anyways, aren't you? So
I enjoy the Warhammer
Dungeon
Quest, the Warhammer Quest stuff. So Blackstone Fortress. and also I'd had a game of the AOS one, which was it was fun as well. It's just it's a simple system.
A Silver Tower.
No, it's not Silver
Curse
Tower.
City.
Curse City is the one I'm looking for. Yeah. So yeah, it's a simple system of you've got some activations, you roll randomly. Again, it's quite swingy. We're sort of getting probably into a bit of a sort of theme here. And then finally had a game of Kill Team using the Into the Dark Terrain with Ben. This is going back a little while now, but it was a great game. It was meant to be an intro game for him, but
Is this your friend Ben or Ben the Painter Ben?
This is Ben from the club, Painter Ben, who is good at war games and knew the crack with Kill Team better than I did probably coming in, and was playing Legionaries, and Legionaries are really good at Kill Team at the moment. And Ben is really good at playing games as well, and so I got my arse absolutely handed to me there. But it was a lot of fun. I always enjoy the Into the Dark Terrain. It's a fun game mode, and it was good
Is
to
that the
see.
one that we played?
That is the
cool.
Inner Space Hulk, opening doors, going on guard, and that kind of thing.
So definitely cool.
Quite thematic. And then it is going back a while ago now, but like we did have a game of Warmaster.
We did.
Which was your first?
Yep,
entry
absolutely
into
my
that world?
first. Yeah.
So any thoughts? What did you think of Warmaster?
Yeah, I liked it. I think most of it seemed really sort of easy to understand.
Until
So some of the combat resolution stuff's pretty crazy, isn't it? Like I follow you and then you follow me and then I get to attack again but when you move that way I have to do this, and then if I want to I can move in this way, which would let this other regiment from the brigade fit into here, but is that possible? And so there was a lot of, and I think something that we had mused and laughed out about a little bit is that the rulebook's almost written conversationally, isn't it? Like I'm all for detail and I'm all for having a bit of that older school style of approach, but sometimes you just need some bullet points.
Bullet points in rules are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So Warmaster's great. So 10 mil scale, 8 mil, 10.
Yeah.
So small scale battles set in Warhammer Fantasy. So the kind of massive battles that you all sort of wanted Warhammer Fantasy to be, you can do with Warmaster, and 3D printable stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
So my take on it is it's like a radically simple game, and you're just moving your stuff and everything's great. And then, although I say you're just moving your stuff, you have to actually pass
the orders.
Command check before you can do that.
I was impressed by the fact that I managed to do the one thing that I thought, that'll hardly ever come up when I picked Dark Elves, which is the if you roll a double 6 for an order test,
right,
you just have to kill one of your officers or your characters, or permanently lose a level.
Right.
I didn't think that was going to happen. But
such is the way of Nagaroth, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
But really simple up to the point when you're getting into combat, at which point it kind of becomes a different game and a sort of quite a crunchy. Yeah, some of the stuff you're talking about, where how combat's resolved, and also like certain types of units can go after people that you've won combat against and cut them down, and some can't. And so I need to, having played a couple of games, need to have another read of the rules. But just really enjoyable to get on the table, I think, because of the different scale. Because of
it looked great.
I think so.
I don't know if you can see, but I've ended up printing myself one of those castles as well.
All right.
Because it just looked so good on the table.
Really cool. All right, that's all done for like games played and hobby progress. We have got a bit of good GW, bad GW.
Yep.
Do you want to have a pop at that?
I'll let you do the
Workshop?
good first. You can be good cop, I'll do bad.
Okay. Well, so the thing, we've been talking about high elves a lot, or a bit. So my thing for good GW is that among the high elves, are they called high elves in the old words still? I think so.
Yeah.
They haven't given them like a mad name or something like that. Still high elves.
No, still high elves, yeah.
So they've brought back a bunch of old stuff for the old world, and in among that is like basically the one miniature, which is sort of like a bit of it's something I've been trying to get my hands on for ages.
Unicorn miniature.
And it's the Lothern Skycutter, which is probably one of the most sort of preposterous miniatures they've ever done. So for anyone that's never seen it, it's basically a massive bird towing a sort of chariot through the sky, on which you can either have, I think you can have like a mage or a wizard or some archers. But it just seems, a really inefficient way of getting around.
Yeah.
And
Instead of just riding a bird.
Instead of just riding a bird.
Yeah.
And I think it's also it was completely turd in the game. I don't think it was ever any use in Warhammer Fantasy. Maybe it's going to be a superstar
you couldn't exactly
now.
just stop and have a scrap, could you?
You couldn't, but
Be like a shark, will just die if it stops flying.
I don't know what the rules are going to... It's going to have some minimum movement rules going on, isn't it? But yeah, so anyway, when it comes out, because they've released some of the High Elf stuff, but not all of the High Elf stuff, so I'm keeping an eye on those 10 o'clock Saturday morning emails to see when it's actually going to come out.
How you going to grab one?
But I'm definitely going to grab one with an eye to playing it, not in Warhammer Fantasy or Warhammer the Old World, but in one-page rules version.
Oh, yeah.
So I've got no idea if it's any good in that either. But like I've wanted one of these things to like paint up since forever. So it's great that it's going to come out and presumably be slightly cheaper than the ones on eBay or the recasters.
Just buy a miniature because you like the miniature. In the end, we're all grown-ups. We've got grown-up money. And if you like the cool thing, buy it. Even if it's like, stick it in your army, even if it's not the most optimal, just do it.
Okay. Well, thanks for that validation. I will. But yeah, the return of a Lothern Skycutter, that's my good GW. What's your good or bad GW for this month?
Well, so I suppose the good aspect of it is that they did pretty good with the new... I mean, it's not a new edition, but like a pseudo-new edition of the Lord of the Rings rules. I tried my first game of it a couple of months ago and really enjoyed it. And I have been planning on playing it for about a year. And in that year, I've backed the Wargames Kickstarter, Patreon, because they make amazing miniatures. And I got very excited about the game. And I was like, right, that's it. I'm starting making a list, this, that, and the other. And I messaged Peter, my friend, and was like, how do I can't, where's all the Easterland stuff? And they've actually just binned off Easterlands for the first part of the release. So Easterlands now don't exist in the armies that you're able to play in Lord of the Rings, what's it, Middle Earth strategy battle game?
Yeah.
Mesburger.
Not in Legends, not in anything.
Just nothing, yeah. Yeah, but not well, as far as I know, I am much of a novice. But so Tabletop Admiral, which is a really good list building site, they're not in any of them, and all of the lists have been really narrowed down because you have to play all of the list building options. So like factions are set from specific parts of books or films.
Yeah.
So like Azog's Hunters, you can only take Azog and his son or whatever he's called, and then Warg Riders and Wargs, and that's it. Which I can kind of understand, but like I would rather just play Gundabad as a whole faction and be able to make a themed list.
You want.
Yeah.
So I haven't been paying a lot of attention to this. Is the theory then that they are releasing this edition or have released this edition, to encourage people to play that cool scene from the films, basically?
I don't know. And Peter did assure us that at some point they were going to re-release Easterlands with rules and things like that. Just didn't think it was going to be in the first couple of waves or whatever. But what worries us is we've seen them already axe a load of stuff that's in active play in terms of things going to Legends, whole armies of Stormcast Eternals, which are still very much...
Yeah. Well, that was 6-year-old miniatures all disappearing.
Getting binned off. So, yeah, I'm a bit peed off about that, mainly because the Wargames miniatures are unbelievable. I really like that Eastern aesthetic. They've got its really ornate armor, and they've got like the face veils on, and there's quite a lot of cavalry. They've got like cataphract cavalry and stuff like that, which I just think is really cool. So I was dead excited to paint them and use some nice vibrant colors because they've got that sort of very mixed aesthetic, haven't they? But it has a mixture of sort of Arabic and Oriental styles and things like that, doesn't it? So, yeah, hopefully they fix it, but if not, then yeah, bad GW.
Bad GW.
Mhm.
All right. Cool. Let's swing then into the main topic, Daryl. So why do we play war games anyway? So yeah, it's potentially sort of massive and unwieldy topic, but yeah, the idea was that it would hopefully tell us something, you know, about ourselves, the kind of games that we like, and how we can have more of those kind of games.
Yeah.
So yeah, straight off the bat, what kind of gamers are each of us anyway? I think we've probably got like a decent idea of this, but do we know it for sure, and does it change? So yeah, like how do you define like the kind of gamer that you are, or the kind of games that you're into? Off the bat, what's your sort of like first thoughts on that?
I think I definitely lean into structured or organized play type stuff,
Yeah.
I don't want to say competitive, although I have competed in tournaments and things like that. I don't necessarily want to say that is the only thing I do. I'm not the kind of person that goes and puts loads of reps in and practices the same list over and over and over again, things like that. I don't do that. But I do quite like a bit of competition. So I think I'm probably leaning more over that way in terms of play style and driving factors. But I think the main one for me is just I was brought up with, reading things like Lord of the Rings and Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time and, cool fantasy stories, David Gemmell, and then walking past the model shop in Whitley Bay. I don't know did you ever?
I was never around.
Were you not?
Was there a cool model shop in Whitley Bay back
There was
in
a
the day?
model shop in Whitley Bay that sold mainly model boats and scale models and stuff like that. You know where Oliver's Books is?
No.
Where the Rockcliffe pub is?
Yes.
Not
Yeah,
far
yeah.
from there. So
Okay.
it's when you first come into where the shops are on Whitley Road.
Okay.
Just sort of there. Yeah, and it was just like this little stuffy old one that had just a wall of like GW blisters. And it was around the time second edition came out. I ended up getting second edition 40k. So like, it's all just stuff that aesthetically I thought was dead cool. I just thought it was really cool. And I still just chase that. Oh, this looks really cool. I like sci-fi and I like fantasy, and I'll pick up a game regardless of, unless the rules look absolutely rubbish, I'll pick up a game if it's got a cool aesthetic and it looks marginally playable. I suppose that's me.
Yeah, that's cool. So that's the two sort of things there, isn't it? The aesthetics got to be there to to get the interest at the start. And then if the rules are good, then that obviously helps. So that's going to help keep you playing. I was thinking there's lots of different ways of attacking this, and one was maybe to think about separating the reasons for wargaming into two categories. And some reasons are about like why having any hobby, and then other reasons are about like why having this one in particular. So like I don't know, have you ever seen the Mortimer and Whitehouse Gone Fishing television program? Where there's basically two older lads going fishing, but it's not about the fishing. They could be doing anything. I've often thought when watching that, they could be. I mean, it would maybe not make us a lovelier program with such good outside shots, but they could be playing tabletop games, or it could be like stamp collecting or whatever. It's just two guys who are doing something which allows them to like talk to each other in a way which gives them a sort of like a distraction from actually having to be sat opposite each other kind of thing. And so I've got some like lists of different things here, but hopefully we can have a bit of a back and forth about this, because it's just rather than just like wheel off these bullet points. But yeah, I think the main thing for me about why like this hobby as opposed to sort of like why any hobby is that to a large extent it's because of the sort of analog and physical nature of it, right? So it's about like actually being in a place with people, not online, not on Tabletop Simulator, which we can talk about in a minute because I think that's really interesting. And yeah, and interacting with actual people, with actual physical objects between you. And we can talk about this as well because something I think is interesting in and really helpful in a lot of situations in wargaming is having a really good app to run the game. But having played Frostgrave recently, the couple of games that I've played with that, it's just been paper and pen and actual physical rule books. And that's been really nice. It's been really nice to sort of like get back to that.
But is that because of how simple Frostgrave is, and would it have been as easy to do for something like 40k, for example?
Yeah, no, it wouldn't.
Yeah.
But is that because 40k at the moment is the terrain is all set out in a particular way? The mission packs change so frequently, the rules change so frequently. So 40k at the moment is verging maybe more almost towards like esports, where like, you know, a lot of things are like people are coming at it from the same angle.
Yeah.
Whereas, maybe this is a quick way of saying I'm really enjoying playing Frostgrave at the moment. I haven't had a game of 40k in ages. I really enjoyed the last time I played 40k. No shade on 40k.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's the game that it is. But yeah, for me, it's just that that analog physical thing rather than it being digital or online.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tabletop Simulator. Have you used Tabletop Simulator?
Yeah.
And so how do you feel about that analog thing then? Is it not important? Or do you get it anyway just by being online with people?
So I started using Tabletop Simulator because of COVID lockdown.
Yeah.
And me, my fiance, and my friends would regularly have a Friday or a Sunday night playing board games at someone's house, which is the same as you're saying. It's that analog experience of you're seeing your friends, but with something there. And you know, it's funny, isn't it? Because actually, and I mentioned this in one of my bullet points, it's my equivalent of going to the pub and watching the match, or, you know, going and having a game of darts or a game of pool. Like, it is a bit strange just being sat at the opposite side of the table of someone and just like having to talk, you know, like it's really strange. But if there's a mutual thing happening that you're invested in, like Alex came to mind on last night after the tournament, and he came first. I opened a bottle of not champagne, but like a bottle of fizz because it's his, you know, he's back. My friend's back. And he's just won. Yeah. I'm celebrating him being here. I'm celebrating his win. We just had a glass each. But I still stuck, like, very quietly, Ace Ventura on in the background, and we were having a good conversation and eating the curry that we had ordered, but also just laughing at odd time about something that was happening on TV, because it's just something else that's sort of happening to make it not so, like, intense interview style communication, isn't it? Which I don't like.
Yeah, no. Yeah. You don't want conversations with your friends to feel necessarily like a counseling session or like an intense kind of we are here to have this conversation thing.
Exactly. And it, you know, since time immemorial, it's happened everywhere, hasn't it? It's the same reason why there's sports on the TV when you go to most pubs, or there's a bit of music in the background, or, you know, people go and when they hang out together, they go and do things. They don't just go and sit. You know, even if there's a TV on the background when you go and have a chat with someone, it's just, that's how it is, yeah. So yeah, that's why I started using TTS. Lockdown happened, couldn't do board games anymore.
But lockdown has finished now, and you're still using TTS, or
very rarely?
Oh, okay,
very rarely.
Okay.
I know most of the people that use TTS now are the people that are very competitive gamers that practice. That just want practice.
That is a good way to get the reps in, because you don't have to leave your house. You don't have to, like, you know, paint anything.
Especially for older in terms of having kids, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It means that you can do bedtime. It can be 8:30. Once you finish getting all sorted, dishwasher's done and everything, you can come up and have a couple of hours on the game, but then you're not having to worry about the travel there. Packing and unpacking and setting up and getting rid of, and then traveling back. You're still in bed for a reasonable time for work tomorrow. But yeah, other than the odd game that I've had with Alex because he lives in Canterbury now.
Yeah.
I haven't really, and I've learned a few games, from joining official Discord. So like that Seventh Sea game, I joined the official Discord, and a guy from Italy showed me how to play. And he did a really good job.
That's cool.
But he just we just logged on onto TTS. There's a free app to do it, a free module to do it, and just showed me the game.
Yeah.
So it is useful for stuff like that. I mean, some would argue you can try games before you buy them as well to see if you like it, which I think is a really good idea as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would always choose to do it in person if I could.
Yeah. Yeah. I got a demo from Chris, one of the admins from the club, who was good enough to show us the ropes on TTS, just actually how to use the actual program. And yeah, I can see, especially if you're like competitively minded or wanting to get the reps in, or can you get a game of 40k in once you've put the kids to bed?
Yeah.
On TTS you can. Going to somebody's house, maybe not so much. But yeah, it's just I've never taken it any further than that, because it's not. I'd rather play a computer game.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be on a
playing
computer
with 3D scans of someone else's models, and exactly. And actually, I do play a lot of computer games, but yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, on that social thing, something I was thinking about as well is that, gaming is a pretty great way of sort of making and sustaining friendships. Tabletop wargaming is, helps with that, and actually, it's not easy to meet new people these days, and gaming I think works as well as like a shared language, a lingua franca. So, I don't need to know, what your job is, or I don't need to know, what you're into or whatever. If we've got this sort of like shared interest, which we know enough about for it to be like a safe thing that we, particularly with 40k or, games that everyone plays. If you're like, oh, what army have you got? Oh, that's cool. Why are you into them? You can have a conversation about that.
What have you been painting? Cool.
What have you been painting? Oh, where did you get that from? Oh, have you been into them for a while? Oh, when did you start painting? And then that can really easily turn into a conversation about other things, that aren't to do with gaming.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to have that sort of like shared language, which is easy to talk about, particularly, if people are like socially anxious or anything like that, to have that thing which you can talk about and be enthusiastic about as well.
Yeah.
I think is really cool. And like, I mean, the gaming club, I would count like, a good number of people as like friends that I didn't have. I've like made in my 40s or something. And like, I'm okay for friends. It's fine. But like, it's amazing to like meet a bunch of new people without having to go on some like.
That's why we're here.
Exactly. Yeah. So out of that has, sprung this conversation as well. But yeah, it's fantastic for that. And we've got all the stuff as well. I mean, for the most part, if you go to the club, you will notice that it's mostly men that are there, and that is the case across, tabletop gaming generally. And stereotypically, we can be pretty poor at talking about things to do with, emotional and mental health and all of that.
Yeah.
And it can be like maybe a fantastic way of like getting that sort of like that kind of support without having to make, a lifelong friendship with somebody before you can actually sort of get it.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very good point, actually, that I had never really thought of necessarily. But I think because maybe just naively in my mind that the people that I value, these friends that I've made, kind of transgress that they're members of the club that I go to, and they just become my friends,
Well, exactly. But then there's something that started that, isn't there?
Exactly. But that was the catalyst, wasn't it? That was the catalyst. But yeah, I mean, I've met some fantastic people that I speak to. In fact, the only people I speak to every day, bar my best friend Scott, are Alex and Rob from the club. And they're that every single day. They're the only people that I speak to every day. And it's again, just from mutual. Alex I met because he was looking for a demo of Conquest.
Yeah.
Rob turned up to play some Kill Team, and then he started playing Conquest. But, not saying Conquest is the best game in the world. It is. But, it's, I just think it is definitely a really good icebreaker, isn't it, to have that
That's
commonality?
it.
There's two lads at the club yesterday that came, and they've been a few times now, John and Drew, who actually work at the hospital that I work at. And I was sat in the canteen. They were behind me. I was sitting eating my sarnie, and I heard someone say, "Oh, I'm sure they were saying, oh, I need to get this for me Necrons." Blah, blah. And I turned around and I went, "Are you talking about 40k?"
Yeah.
It's not a very common thing to hear in a hospital. You know, I work with vast majority women, and even the men are very typically not into gaming of that variety. So and they were like, "Oh yeah," and I mentioned, we're at this club just down the road. Why don't you come down? Took them ages to come down, but they ended up coming down. And John had a game of 40k there and really enjoyed it for the first time. Played against Stephen.
That's great.
Yeah, had a really good time. And Drew played against Ben, who's not the same Ben, but another lovely lad. And it's in that narrative league that they're running. It's really
Nice. Yeah.
sounds really good. And I've really enjoyed reading people's stuff coming out of that. It's been good, hasn't it?
That's been fantastic. So yeah, I mean, similar to what we've been doing with Frostgrave,
Mm-hmm.
some people have been like going the extra mile and beyond when it comes to like writing the story for their and that's almost made me think like, I wish I'd been involved in that, but there's only so much time and it's fine. But like really vicariously enjoying other people's write-ups of their 40k armies.
Liam's game looked amazing, didn't it? With
Great terrain.
Yeah, amazing terrain, and it was just that. It was almost like a Zulu-esque last line of defense, wasn't it? Just a square of Admech with hordes and hordes of Tyranids running at them. It was really
looks
good.
amazing. So, so Liam is a big Admech guy.
Yeah, he is a big Admech.
And
he's got
all the terrain. He's got all the Admech, and like so that game was like some of his guys were basically in the middle and just trying to survive 5 turns. I think.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, fantastic. It's perfect that you've said that about like people at work, because I was gonna ask you about that thing where you overhear people in like a situation where you're not expecting it, and you're like, "Oh, you're into that thing," and you're like, "Oh, you're," and it's really.
I'm quite gobby anyways, aren't I? But it's I think when I hear, so I've got way past the point now of caring what people think about. Because I probably used, especially in my late teens, early 20s, I would never tell people that's what I was into. Like it was almost like sacrosanct to even mention it. But now when people are like, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm like, "I play computer games and I paint miniatures and play war games with them."
And I love it.
Yeah. And people are like, "Oh, right, I like war," and I'm now getting more and more surprised by people who say, "Oh, I like Warhammer," and I'll be like, "Well, I don't play Warhammer really, but I do play lots of games that I like it."
Yeah.
And then there's been a few people that are like, "Oh, I don't play Warhammer, but I'm really into D&D," and I'm like, "Oh, that's amazing." And then I've just started working with one of the research fellows that work in respiratory with me, and she was like, "Oh, I know what Warhammer is. I don't play, but we play loads of board games." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And then she started reeling out a load of board games. I was like, "Yep, play that, love it. Play that, love it." And it's good because again, it's just gaming's that little common ground, isn't it? That and like an hour-long conversation sprouted out of that, just the fact that we both like gaming.
Yeah, it's just a really easy way to sort of like start making that back and forth with people, which can be, it doesn't have to be any more than that.
No,
let's have a 10-minute chat about cool board games.
Yeah.
Perfect. Or you can find that you've got like more in common with people.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
It's that thing that it can get you over the hump of that, like, weird social whatever it is. And it's amazing. I mean, like, the reason that I got into playing war games basically as an adult was like a conversation at work where Ben, who my friend who I've brought to the club a couple of times, I don't know how we got on it. Somebody else was talking about D&D, and he said something, and it was just at the point when I had Blood Bowl when they rebrought Blood Bowl out. I'd bought that
with the Black Orcs and the
and the humans, the Reichland Reavers. Didn't have anyone to play it with. It was sort of like going online. I mean, even since then, this is going back probably like 10 years.
Yeah,
and it's wild how much more easy it is to find people online to play with now. But yeah, it was turned into a conversation about 40k. I think I might have bought the 8th edition set with like the Ultramarines and the Death Guard in it. and boom, all of a sudden I had somebody to play against. And I was like, wow, I need to paint some miniatures now. And then we had a game, and I had no idea what I was doing because I hadn't played since I was a kid, and I didn't know what I was doing then. But then that was it. I was in, and that that's just from like an offhand conversation. You're up and running.
But the seed was already there because you were
yeah.
in when you were a kid, and then you don't really need. I think, like you say, as an adult, or like I said, like as an adult with adult money, and if there's already the inkling there, that bit of interest, and you just decided to go, sod it, I'll just get. I mean, you know what? There's been loads of stuff. There's been loads of games that I've bought and bought it, I tried it. It was okay. Wasn't really that big of a deal for me. Sell it on, lose a tenner. I've lost a tenner, 15 quid or whatever, but tried something new. And I'm a firm proponent of just giving things a try.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about that. I'm very eclectic in my gaming tastes.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing in itself as well, isn't it? Something else I wanted to mention was the fact that, like, I don't know, I was trying to think of like whether this applies to like other hobbies, and probably it does to some extent. Try and think of some examples. But with tabletop gaming, if you're painting stuff at home or wherever you paint your stuff, and that's that's probably for most people most of the time a very sort of private, personal endeavor.
Yep.
And then getting to bring that into a situation where it's not just like, oh, look at this thing that I did. It's like, this thing that I painted has got some use here. It's got some utility.
Yeah.
It's a gaming piece. It may or may not be painted brilliantly, or it may, it may be painted adequately. Either's fine. But again, it's that sort of like a safe way of bringing something that you've done that you might be sort of proud of into like an arena where, without the gaming side of it, people might be are going to be, judging it. How well is it being painted? But like, it's a fantastic way again of just that, having that sort of like the game becomes a safe mechanism for people to show off something that they've done that they're kind of proud of.
I think I consider myself a plumb average painter. Sometimes getting that model that's painted, okay, and you could be playing against someone with an absolutely amazing army, but once it's all on a board and it becomes part of this whole
world,
it really like elevates your work, and I think you kind of get even more value from it, don't you? Because I just think there's something really impressive about a table with painted miniatures on and
painted terrain
and a nice mat, and it's just, and both two people being there for the same reason. It's good.
My favorite bit of a lot of games, particularly 40k, probably because it can go askew after this point, but like my favorite point often is immediately before any dice are rolled, and you just set up all your guys. I'm over here, you're over there, there's some sweet looking terrain.
Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough.
This looks class. Where it's just setting up toy soldiers, and it just looks great. And I think, and then that probably like leads into like, one of the things that I enjoy most about it is just, is again back to that physical thing or the look of it, and working together with other people to sort of like create other worlds as well.
Yeah, I think as sort of despite where you are on that journey of being a painter, it's still a craft, isn't it? Like, you could speak to a woodworker and they'll say, the first bowl I turned was rubbish, but I was proud of it, and I still put it on the mantelpiece for however long, or the first painter or like illustrator, like they'll happily show you their first sketchbook versus their one now, and they'll be like, you still look like this, but this is where I'm at now. And it's all about just taking a bit of pride in your work and a bit of your journey. And so I think we're spoiled a bit because the club that we go to as well quite often has this thing of, you put some stuff down on the table and people are like, oh, that looks really good. Oh, like, is it all right if I have a look at that? Oh yeah, these are great. This looks great on the table together and stuff. And it's not, people aren't lifting it up and expecting golden demon models. They're happy that you're enjoying your hobby and that it's all part of like this big collaborative or collective thing, isn't it? Yeah, I love going and just seeing everybody's stuff on the table and people having a good time.
Yeah.
It just makes me happy. So
Yeah. So Frostgrave again. So the miniatures that are on the table are in the couple of games that we've been having are, well, some are from Warcrow, which look amazing.
Yeah, Tom's done a
Tom's
fantastic
done an
job
amazing
on them.
job
Yeah.
on them. I've got some Warhammer Fantasy stuff. We've all got what's North Star military, isn't
What's
it?
what's your
Wizard.
yeah? What's he called?
Nebulous Dark Side. He's got stars on his cloak and he's
Yeah.
got a big scythe, so he's
Nebulous
Nebulous Dark Side. Yeah, that's a Warhammer Fantasy miniature that I'd wanted for ages. Sorry, my point here is that there's an eclectic bunch of miniatures. That game in particular being miniature agnostic, which is also an interesting thing in itself. It allows people to bring stuff that they think is cool.
Yeah.
And then the next question becomes, well, not why do you think that's cool, but like, you want to know about why somebody's painted that particular thing.
Yeah.
And again, it's just that thing of like, it's just allows people to, the miniature war game allows people to bring something in that they like or that they think is cool, but they've chosen.
That like I loved your right. Obviously, you made Nebulous and his sidekick, but then your whole warband's female, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Which is just
Where were they from? Did you say?
It's North Star
Miniatures.
It's North Star Miniatures, who are the company that make the miniatures for
Oathmark.
Oathmark, is it? I'll confirm this when we actually put it up. It's either Oathmark or North Star, but whoever it is, I'm feeling sure it's North Star. Anyway, they make the miniatures for Frostgrave and Stargrave, and various other things besides.
Yeah,
but yeah, there's you can get Soldiers 1 or Soldiers 2, and Soldiers 2 is all female. So I was like, hardly ever painted any women for any games, so like, let's have that. Which then leads us into an interesting thing of like, well, do I need to have some sort of like canon or lore for why Nebulous Darkside is wandering around with an all-female warband, and what does that mean?
What was the canon?
Haven't figured out anything which doesn't sound really cringy or like hyper woke or somewhere, or both of those things. But anyway, what are we saying? Yeah, it's just really cool to play games where there's like a variety of things that people can bring, which they've got some sort of interest in, and they want to show off, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
What else? You've got a few things on here, Daryl. Was there anything you wanted to pick up?
So why I game in the style that I game,
sure,
I suppose, is I think I do have a natural competitive streak. Now, I don't mean that I'm a competitive gamer in terms of I go out and buy the best units and do things like that, but I like to play a game that makes me feel like it's a challenge, like I have there's a bit of peril involved, like and the peril being winning or losing, not I'm not betting on anything or anything like that, but and sort of it's an opportunity for you to test your skill, isn't it? Like how well do I know this army? How well do I know my opponent's army? How well can I read my opponent? Can I set up a game plan, action it, and make sure that I respond to the threats that are there? And sort of as a side to that, or the next part of that, so it should be more like a sub heading more than a separate one, is that I really like solving the puzzles that a game makes. Right. So, having that one disastrous turn where the thing that you really didn't want to dies because of really bad dice luck, and how do I come back from this? How do I make the most of the situation that I'm in now that this thing's happened? Or, on the flip side, right, I've broke through his lines. How do I maximize this? How do I get the most out of this? And while I suppose that might sound a bit like try hard or whatever to some people, to me that's like the fun, like you would never play a game of chess or anything like that and like do things
narrative.
Or like no. So I see. I was
part
of it. I know you probably read the conversation, and I think that the term narrative gets used really incorrectly all the time, and I think there's a massive spectrum from narrative up to top level competitive play, and I think narrative is a very specific thing. For instance, those people that like reenact the Battle of Trafalgar or Quatre Bras or all of those kind of things. You know, the people that are reenacting real scenarios or scenarios that are canon. You know, things that have definitively happened in like stories or whatever, or with a predefined narrative, like we were talking about Liam's game and the other narratives that have been happening. So I know Stephen and John had a really good one where Fabius Bayer was trying to escape, and they played a game where he had to get off the other side of the board, so he had to run the length of the pitch.
Sounds like a story. Yeah,
exactly. That to me is narrative, okay?
Which is different from just non-optimal.
Which is different from playing a game of 40k with the stuff that you like.
Yeah.
That's not narrative.
That's casual.
That's casual, trying to build a thematic list, fine, but there's no narrative there. You're still playing the missions with the cards. You're playing a game of 40k. And
that's casual competitive.
You can't not be competitive in 40k, can you? The game is built to be a competitive game, but
anyway,
exactly. So it's people that are playing with what they've got. They don't want to go out and spend extra money to optimize lists and whatever, which is fine. And I don't think anybody should have to do that.
That's me with my starter box armies.
That's
40K, which is have a lovely time with one unit of this and one unit of that, not knowing the rules for them all because there's too many units,
which is why I often run. It's funny because Alex was talking about this. I always run things in twos, but it's because it means it halves the things that I have to learn. But also, if you lose one, you still have the other one to do something with and go, oh, that's what they do. And then, you know, you go up to the people who I consider myself as like as somebody who tries to do optimized play.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the people who are going to be competitive players who are out there that are practicing for competition, which is in the competitive word. You know, that's what competitive is aiming for someone who's going to go to a competition and win. I don't put reps into practice. I don't go out and buy the best things. Yes, I buy things that I like for my list, but the list that I ran for the Spires in this tournament was very far from optimized. I ran lots and lots of those Leonine Avatara and their mid to lower levels of power in the faction, but I think they look cool.
Yeah.
And they've got a really cool rule where if you shoot something with their bows, if cavalry charge them afterwards, then they get extra impact hits. I then had to shoehorn in a unit of cavalry to try and make use of that, which I did once out of the whole 4 games.
That's a thing, isn't it, of like not having an army which is set up optimally as like, you know, this is how you should play this army, but like trying to make interesting rules interactions work
do something
which like entertains you or you enjoy.
So that was the theme that I liked. The theme for me was very fast mounted, because I can't really call them mounted in Spires because they're the animals as well as the
they're
people.
Mounted on themselves.
But I get a kick out of the idea of these Leonine Avatara essentially marking the prey with like a massive spear jutting out the side, which makes them more vulnerable to the cavalry coming in and smashing into them. It didn't work very well, but I enjoyed trying to make it happen.
How about so you were playing as the ringer, so as like the spare guy for anyone that didn't turn up. Were you thinking about how you were gonna, like, were you deliberately writing a sort of all comers, nothing fancy list, or were you going as if you would have been at the tournament anyway, or any difference?
No. I built a list just to try out the Leonine Avatara, and I played it against Alex on Friday.
Yeah,
and then I just used that list and I got smashed off Alex. Alex is a very good player. I got smashed off Alex on Friday, and I was just like, well, the list isn't egregious, and what I didn't want to do is take a optimized list. Being somebody that I think I'm a pretty good player in terms of Conquest, where there's going to be some newer players turning up.
Sure.
I didn't want to be like, welcome to my tournament level
Yeah.
list.
Welcome to my
Yeah.
tournament that I've organised. Now let me smash you.
Yeah. Welcome to hell.
Yeah.
No, I didn't want to do that. And I was just like, right, it's cool. It can do some stuff. And I can also dive pretty easily. It gives people a fair chance, whatever.
Yeah.
And I got to play with the big cats. So it's fine. So yeah, I think that's that's where I put myself in that big spectrum. I put myself in that optimized gamer, but not heavy comp. Constantly making lists and constantly working things out. Yeah, and I'll practice this one 6 times in a week, and then
Have you ever done that? Have you ever like played, I don't know, like the same list 4 or 5 times running and made little tweaks and been like, haha, I've seen the Matrix now and I'm gonna clear up at this tournament.
So this is going to make us sound really like conceited and big-headed, but the list that I won the LGT with, I played one game, changed one thing, played it another 2 times, and then took it to the LGT. And then the next time, I played a game with one of the elephants, and it was very good. And I had a Rakshasa in, like, one of those big cat things. And it happened to be the same points as another elephant. And the Friday before, the Friday before the Friday we went down to LGT, I was like, the Rakshasa's okay, but the elephant did so much more. And Rob kind of jokingly went, just order another one. And I was like, nah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I ordered one and I didn't have it. I built it at the LGT on Friday night.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, that sort of makes your point of like looking for that optimal thing, and I think that maybe like gets in like a whole other conversation of like maybe the benefit of playing lots of different games is that you become like
pattern
a bit more adept at like seeing like what's good in any sort of particular situation. I had on there as well like mastery. I'm not gonna call that's like a big word for like how good I am at any games, but like just that thing of like seeing yourself get a bit better. There's an absolute enjoyment in that, isn't there? Like I think come with that.
I think it's something like for you, like when you play that game with your Necrons, and then you're like, oh, and when that happens, this is an interaction that happens, and then at the beginning of this turn, I'll do this, which will do this, and then it's when all the things start starting in place instead of getting the end of the turn and going, oh, if I had have done that, then this would have happened. And it's stepping from that nose in the boot constantly to knowing what your stuff does and knowing how it's beneficial, and then like it feeling a bit more natural. When you get to that point, it does feel good, doesn't it? Because you feel slick, you feel like you can play a turn in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. What else? There's some other stuff I was going to mention here. I mean, being a part of a community in the wider sense, so we've talked about this, that could be a gaming club, a Discord server, but yeah, the thing of like getting things done together. So the allotment Wildlands, West Allotment Wildlands, there was like a day when a whole bunch of terrain was all sort of like put together, and people like working on that together. Again, I think like what that probably is serving is just it's an excuse to get together and be with other humans and have good conversations.
We drank loads of tea, we ate a load of biscuits, we put some stuff together and chatted quite a lot.
Another thing that I've got down here, and I think this sort of calls back to what you were saying about being a kid and seeing cool stuff, just sort of being able to like imagine and be part of other worlds, so sci-fi and fantasy is primarily where most of the games that we're playing are set. And just to sort of like it's escapism basically.
It is.
So we're recording this like a couple of days after there was like a bit of an awkward conversation in the Oval Office, so sometimes the real world can seem like a pretty bizarre and grim place, and being able to like either, I don't know, in something like 40k, it's like, well, the whole point is that it's like the grimness is amped up to the absolute max. So like our world seems kind of fine compared to this. That satirical.
Well, at least I'm not a servitor.
At least I'm not a servitor. Exactly. So there's that. so that escapism thing. But then also, you know, like we've talked about this in relation to military games, of like being able to like see this world differently, or like think about how something could have gone differently. And that sort of thing of like, what's it like about having agency or having like control over sort of a situation, or
Yeah.
trying to sort of see how things would have gone in a different situation. I think that's kind of like a really big deal as well. And then related to that, it's sort of like a lot of it's just telling stories. And this is, you know, you've mentioned, and I think I really agree with you about that spectrum or whatever histogram
Venn
of like
diagram,
Venn
yeah.
diagram of narrative and competitive, and how that those words are sort of like not always used quite appropriately. But like, even if it's in a quite a shallow way, you know, like if I roll a bunch of dice and fail all my to hits, and I make some casual remark about, oh, they've all just pinged off his like daft big hat that he's wearing, or whatever. It's just a way of like, in either quite a shallow way or in a much more in depth, deep way, when people are actually doing narrative gaming, of just being able to like tell stories together in a collaborative way.
Do you know what that reminds me of? I don't know if you've ever watched Critical Role, but Matt Mercer, I've never watched it, but I've seen a load of like shorts of him doing stuff, and that there's like this thing that he's really famous for. Do you know who Matt Mercer is?
I don't know.
So Matt Mercer is this guy who he's a voice actor. He does a lot of voiceovers for a lot of games and stuff like that. But he's also a phenomenal DM, phenomenal world builder. And one of his favorite things, and it's almost like it's like his little coined phrase now, is that someone will roll something like a really good roll or whatever, and he'll go, okay, how do you want to do this? And I love a little bit exactly what you were saying. You know, like if I fire off a load of shots at someone, and you know it goes wide, and I say, oh, I just trashed a building behind you, or you know, even making like almost like ridiculous jokes about bouncing it off his codpiece or whatever. Like, I love a little bit of like color into the
That's interesting, yeah.
because it's like otherwise it is very just sanitary, just dice numbers versus your numbers, and then remove the what could be a tiddlywink, you know, for the sake of it. But when you do have a little bit of a, but then the flip side of that is you go, well, how can a tank not just, even if it did miss, how can it miss that far, and blah blah blah, the explosion should hit him, or you know, the sword's that big that it would cut him in half, it can't possibly bounce off his armor, you know.
So for that kind of thing to work, you just need that magic, really hard to define thing of just a sort of like the social contract of people who want the story to work in more or less the same kind of way. And like, I don't know, how can you define that? I think broadly you can define it as like, people just want the cool thing to happen, but like, and everyone can have like a different idea of that. And like, you know, you can easily make jokes about like people have narratives for their armies. Like, well, my narrative is that I win every game, you know, that's my story. But like, it's again, I'll go back to the Frostgrave games we've been having recently. It's just when there's any sort of like doubt about a sort of situation where the rules are kind of interacting with the story, it's just been so easy to resolve because the people around the table are good citizens who are invested in having a good time and having a mutually good time as well. So like, you know, it's like somebody, I got in a spot of bother with some massive boar towards the end of the game. So like Will was good enough to like point his archer at it and stuff like that, despite the fact that we'd been, you know, trying to get the same treasure and stuff. It's just,
I heard your apothecary ran into a bit of bother at the beginning of one of the games though.
Yes. Yeah. They got annihilated instantly.
With a single spell.
Yeah, but so goes it, you know. I mean, they didn't die the true and final death, so they recovered in the aftergame roll kind of thing. So, but yeah, it's just that's that thing that you're talking about. I think of like, you know, people want the color or the story coming into, you know, a rule set.
Yeah.
It's really hard to define, but you know when it's happening, and it's a really great thing, and that really is one of the sort of the best things about tabletop wargaming is, you know, resolving that social contract.
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
have and just enjoying the fact that you're on the same page as other people.
Yeah,
Literally.
yeah. It is. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's quite fun when you hear someone playing a game and they're like, "Well, I should probably just stay on this point and score some points," but actually, this is it's a unit of I don't know what they're called again, the Blood Angels, crazy guys.
Sanguinary. Oh no, Death Company.
Death Company,
Yeah,
yeah. It's a
They're
unit
not.
Death
They're not
Company.
hanging around.
They're not
yeah.
going to stand there and score me
Orcs,
points.
they're not hanging
going, yeah,
around,
exactly.
yeah.
They're going for that charge, which is very difficult to achieve, but I'm going to try.
I mean, sometimes when I've played Orcs in Kill Team a fair amount of the commandos,
Mhm.
and you get caught between that because like I kind of want to win this game, but this is really not what this guy
Can't
would
really
do.
competitive.
Yeah, exactly. Can I think up of a good reason why he's just gonna like?
so
He's been distracted by a squig or something.
Well, but in the law, the commandos are
They're at the sneakier end
sneaky,
of the green skin spectrum
they're
for sure.
cunning and brutal, not
Yeah.
brutal and cunning.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, cool. Well, that's probably about like sums it up. Yeah, any sort of like final thoughts? I think something just to finish on for me as well that I was thinking about when going through this and thinking about this in advance is that the reasons why I play games and the kind of games that I like to play absolutely doesn't stay the same.
No,
like
yeah.
when I was a kid, I didn't like olives. I love olives now, and it's the kind of games that you want to play all the time aren't.
Yeah.
What mood are you in? And I sometimes think that like maybe the reasons that we think that we play games or the kind of games that we think we are maybe fluctuates more than we sometimes think. And so try new things.
I'm not naive to that at all. I mean, as you can see in the Aladdin's cave around here, I can watch a film and be like, right, okay, I need a Napoleonic army now. Right, or
I mean, we're getting older, so it happens.
Well, I've already been pricing one up. Yeah, and or like I'll read a book. I'm with GW stuff, especially considering I'm so sworn off it. Like I can, but I still love GW.
Books are great though.
Yeah, I still love the all of the law and all that kind of stuff and the Black Library stuff, and then I read it and I'm like, oh Christ.
I was reading a little bit of the start of a Night Lords trilogy recently, and I was like,
is Soul Hunter first?
Think so.
Yeah.
It's Dembski, ADB. I was like, I could get a Night Lords kill team.
I've read Soul Hunter and I priced up a full 30k Night Lords army.
It's how it happens. Yeah. It's just it's marketing for a toy soldiers game, but like it's really good marketing for a toy soldiers game. And again, that gets back to like just being imagining other worlds, isn't it? And being in parts of being on that escapism thing. I think that so for me, again, like looking through this, there's so much of this is to do with the social side of it, and I think for me that's massive.
Yeah,
and that would be my sort of like summing up. I think is just the fantastic sort of social opportunities you get through it, which you can get through other things as well, but this is my way of meeting different people.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Fantastic. Well, I've really enjoyed that. Actually, it's really good to sort of like get into some of that, and I think there's bits out of that we can talk about in another podcast in the future.
We could do another double that and still have stuff to say.
Yeah, but shall we wind up this podcast?
Yeah,
with in the time-honored fashion of secondary objectives, which is where we talk about something a little hobby adjacent or non-hobby, which has been getting our attention recently. Do you want to go first, Daryl?
Yeah. Well, so. Obviously, I mentioned that myself and Amanda, my fiance, had done a little bit of building of things together. And she sort of made a passing comment of like, oh, it was really nice to just sort of sit and not be watching a film, but just, doing something but talking. She quite likes building Lego. She's got lots of different Lego sets, but she also doesn't mind building models. So she was like, should we just build some more? Do you fancy like make a list of the stuff that you want built and the priority that you want to build in, and we can just do a bit each night or whatever? Well, no, like just do a bit together each night, and that's sort of like not necessarily building my stuff, but her stuff as well. But that like sort of parallel hobby and sort of time is really good. It's quality time together, doing something that you're both enjoying. She like cross stitches a lot, and she, like I say, likes Lego as well, but. You can just do it in the same space, not necessarily have to be doing the same thing, but, next to each other and just having the odd bit of conversation and talking about things that you're enjoying and stuff like that. And it's really nice. It's nice. I think it's dead easy to get sort of bit caught up in life sometimes, isn't it? And you forget to do all of the things that people should do, especially as a family.
Yeah.
Because you've got like like we say, bedtimes and bath times and iron uniforms to iron, and is this sorted and is the dishwasher done? And then by the time you get to the end of that, you're like, oh God, I just want to chill out. But
See you tomorrow.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But actually, it's quite nice to just chill out and build some stuff, or for her to stitch and me to build and just chat. It's good.
Yeah.
So I think my secondary objective is to do that more. I really like that suggestion of doing like just to making a little list of things that I want to build and then just doing a bit each night or whatever.
Yeah, very cool. All right, not totally unrelated to that, because we're still talking. I'm talking about like physical, tangible things here, but like and I will relate this back to hobbying or gaming in a second, but like. Yeah, music is a physical object. So recently my daughter got a CD player because somebody on the street was giving a CD player away. And she absolutely loves it. So she's 7. And up to this point, music has just been something that like happens when I press some buttons on my phone, and that's it. And she doesn't have a phone, she doesn't have a tablet, so music was she had to like ask for it basically.
Yeah,
I never thought about this before, but she's had to basically ask for music up to this point in her life.
Please listen to some music.
Can I have some music? Who should? Nobody should have to do that anyway. So she's now got agency. She's got, agency to an extent, because the CDs that she's got are all like some of mine and Cash's old stuff. She's got a mix of like the Spice Girls, the Doors, some really really weird eclectic stuff is coming out. She's got like this one like mini CD that was given away with Coca-Cola like back in the 1990s, which has got the Boo Radleys on it, and she loves that tune. So fantastic. But yeah, really interesting, and it's the first time.
And how old's she now?
My daughter's 7.
Yeah, 7. Yeah. It's a good age to start like exploring music as well, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, but like she's just absolutely loving being able to put stuff on that she wants and like play musical chairs with it sometimes. But like just being able to actually have it and own it herself. And I think it's really cool as well to like for her to think of like music, and you could apply the same to movies or to all sorts of other things as an actual physical thing, which kind of importantly has a start and has an end, and you can't just scroll through it endlessly. And it actually, exists in the real world in some sort of like tangible kind of way. So anyway, I've been in the loft. I've got all my LPs down off the back of this.
And I'm just about to say, it's so funny because your conversation sounds like a conversation that I had with Amanda about when we went away for our birthday, and there was an LP player there, and we put a couple on. There was like a Bowie album, there was the Gorillaz, there was just some random stuff, but it is that Bob Marley, and that it's a case of like you put on and it starts at one and it finishes when it's finished. You can't, unless you start picking up a needle and trying to guess
in the order that the person who did the music thought that you might want to like listen to. And I'm completely aware that this is veering into the territory of just sounding like old person angry at the modern digital world or something like that. But I need to figure out a way of getting a turntable to work on Sonos. I think I've figured out a way of doing it without spending like gazillions of pounds. But back into wargaming and back into that game of Frostgrave that we recently had. But like, again, the value of something being part of like a physical social experience, which isn't on Tabletop Simulator. And we've talked about why that can be a good thing, and that's fine. But that thing of just having physical, tangible experiences shared with other people is a really cool thing. So
I agree entirely.
My daughter's listening to Strange Days by the Doors. I've got my LPs out the loft, and I'm having a lovely time with Frostgrave, and we all lived happily ever after.
That's what it is. I couldn't hope for a better end of the episode.
All right, so on that almost unbridled note of positivity, thanks very much. Thanks, Daryl.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening. Please do all the subscribing and the liking and all the rest of it on YouTube. That'd be great. Next time out leads on nicely from what we've been talking about in some of this, but I think we were going to have a chat about how to be a good opponent.
Yeah. How to be a good participant in a game or a good opponent, and some of that collaborative storytelling / shared experience thing. Yeah.
Amazing. All right. So, yeah, thanks again, everyone. Tune in next time for episode 10 and take it easy. Thanks for listening.
Bye.